We all breathe all day, every day, usually, without a second thought.
Totally automatic, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you said over some fascinating studies, and it turns out the way we breathe, whether it's, deep into our belly, shallow in our chest, or even through our mouths, can have a surprisingly big impact.
Yeah, it's kind of wild.
So in this deep dive, we're going to look at how common these different breathing patterns are, what they actually do to our bodies, and what might be driving them. We've got everything from scientific reports to population surveys to help us, understand this essential function better.
Exactly. It's something so fundamental, yet the nuances of our breathing patterns often go unexamined. When we look at how many people actually breathe using their diaphragm optimally, well, the data is surprisingly sparse in healthy adults.
Really? You'd think that'd be well studied.
You would, but we do see indications that it's not always the default. For instance, studies on stroke patients show over half, like 51.7%, can experience diaphragmatic issues.
Wow.
And around a quarter of those with severe COPD exacerbations have similar problems. Now, this isn't representative of everyone, obviously, but it does suggest efficient diaphragmatic breathing isn't always a given, especially when breathing is already compromised.
And get this, even in a study of Japanese student athletes, I mean, a group you'd expect to be pretty dialed in with their bodies.
Totally. Health conscious.
Yeah. Less than 10% were primarily diaphragmatic breathers. That makes you wonder.
It really does. Interestingly, though, one study did report that abdominal breathing, which we generally equate with diaphragmatic breathing, where your belly rises and falls,
Huh.
is typical during quiet breathing in healthy adults, ages 20, 69. But they also noted that women tend to use less of this abdominal movement during deep breaths.
Huh. So it's not just belly breathing good. There are nuances.
Exactly. Subtle variations even within what we might call good breathing.
Okay, what about chest breathing? Seems harder to pin down with specific numbers, maybe?
Yeah, direct prevalence data for chest breathing is limited, but we can kind of infer its presence from related issues.
Like what?
Well, for example, a significant chunk, maybe 10–25% of middle-aged and older adults, report breathlessness and breathing pattern disorders where a thoracic dominant pattern is common.
Okay.
Those affect maybe 8–10% of the general population, apparently more often in women. So while we don't have a precise figure just for chest breathing itself, its contribution to breathing difficulties seems pretty evident.
Gotcha. Now, mouth breathing.
Yeah.
That's the one where the numbers seemed, well, kind of all over the place.
Yeah, the data on mouth breathing is quite varied, definitely. But it consistently shows a significant portion of both kids and adults doing it. Estimates range like 5% to over 75% in some studies.
75%.
Well, that's on the high end, but we saw figures like over half of children in some Brazilian studies. And one survey had 61% of American adults self-identifying as mouth breathers. Another study found 18.8% in school kids around age 10.
So it's definitely common.
Yeah, pretty common. And maybe even more common as mixed breathing, like mouth and nose. One study found 51% of kids age 6–12 fell into that category.
Okay, so these different ways of breathing are clearly out there. But what's the real impact? Like, why should we care if we're mouth breathing?
Well, chronic mouth breathing can have a surprising number of negative effects. Think about it. By bypassing the nose, you lose the natural filtering, warming, and humidifying of the air.
Ah, right. The nose does a lot.
It really does. So you get increased water loss. It's linked to snoring and sleep apnea. In children, it can even affect how their faces develop over time.
Seriously. Facial development.
Yeah, it's a potential factor. Plus, it can worsen allergies and asthma, cause dry mouth, bad breath, and boost the risk of dental problems. Think cavities, gum disease.
Okay, I'm convinced. Mouth breathing is not ideal long term. What about constantly breathing with our chest?
Right, chest dominant breathing. That means you're taking shallower, maybe faster breaths, using your upper chest and neck muscles more.
The accessory muscle.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Over time, this can lead to tension, even pain in your neck, shoulders, upper back. It can limit how far your diaphragm actually moves down and potentially keep your body kind of stuck in a low-level stress response.
Your flight stuff.
Increased sympathetic nervous system activation. It's also just less efficient for getting oxygen in and waste gas out. can contribute to feeling breathless, dizzy, anxious, fatigued.
So diaphragmatic breathing is where it's at then, basically.
It really does seem to be the most beneficial, yeah. When you breathe deeply using your diaphragm, it helps pull more blood back to your heart,
Okay.
which then triggers this whole cascade of positive effects.
Yeah.
It activates your rest and digest system, the parasympathetic nervous system, leading to a lower heart rate, lower blood pressure potentially.
Nice.
It can improve heart rate variability, or HRV, which is a good sign of cardiac health. Plus, it strengthens your main breathing muscle, reduces stress hormones like cortisol, improves core stability. It even gently massages your internal organs.
Wow. Okay. That's a lot of good stuff. So what makes us fall into these less ideal habits like chest or mouth breathing in the first place?
Well, psychological stress is a big one. When we're stressed, anxious, our bodies often default to that shallow, rapid chest breathing. It's part of the fight or flight response.
Makes sense.
Whereas diaphragmatic breathing actually helps activate the relaxation response. Stress also causes muscle tension, right? In your neck, shoulders, chest, even your abdomen.
Yeah. Definitely feel that sometimes.
And that tension can literally restrict your diaphragm's movement. It physically gets in the way.
So it's like a vicious cycle. Stress causes bad breathing. Bad breathing maybe keeps you stressed.
It can certainly contribute, yeah. And then there's just a lack of awareness. Most of us don't think about how we breathe. We might unconsciously tense our stomachs or have poor posture that scrunches everything up.
Yeah, guilty of the posture thing.
So simply not knowing proper techniques or not being mindful plays a big part.
Okay, so what can we actually do to encourage more diaphragmatic breathing? Is it hard to change?
The good news is, no, not necessarily. There are many effective breathing exercises. Simple diaphragmatic breathing, just focusing on feeling your belly rise as you inhale and fall as you exhale, is a great start.
Is paying attention.
Exactly. There are also specific techniques like pursed lip breathing, which is really helpful for people with lung conditions, slow breathing exercises, patterned breathing like the 4-7-8 technique or box breathing.
I've heard of those.
Yeah, they can be very calming. Even things like mobility exercises for your chest and shoulders, or just being more mindful of your posture can create more space for your diaphragm to work properly.
Okay, so the big takeaway here is that even though breathing is automatic, the pattern we use, how we do it, really, really matters for our overall health and well-being.
Precisely. It impacts everything from our stress levels to our cardiovascular health, even our digestion potentially.
And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? Considering how common these less optimal breathing patterns seem to be, what subtle ways might your own breathing habits be influencing your daily life, your energy, your health, without you even realizing it?
That's the provocative thought, right? It might just be worth paying a little closer attention to your breath throughout the day and maybe, just maybe, exploring some of those simple exercises we mentioned. See if it makes a difference.